Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Overcoming Economic Uncertainty with Equipment Financing. My name is Jesse Johnson, founder of Consult Disrupt, and I'm thrilled to be the host today. Joining me is my co-host, Aaron Rustabaki, sales manager at Beacon Funding. Aaron brings a wealth of experience in helping businesses secure the equipment they need with financing solutions tailored to their specific goals. August makes my 20th year in equipment finance. Aaron, I think from up until 2 years ago, you could sit there and say it was just a steady increase in business ever since 2006 to 2008. So, I've seen kind of one cycle in my 10-year in equipment finance. Based on your experience, I mean, we'll just kind of dive into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. For myself, I've been in equipment financing since 2019. Before that, I was actually a small business owner, so I was on the other end of it and trying to navigate my employees and my customers and take care of the business and whatnot. And I think part of what I've always enjoyed about the equipment financing world is just working with customers, answering their questions, helping them see their business come to fruition and grow and succeed and that kind of thing. So as we go through this, you'll see this special icon that shows all the free resources that Beacon Funding has to offer. So if you see this icon throughout the presentation while Jesse and I are talking, that means that Beacon Funding's got some great things available for you. If you're interested in learning more about that specific topic.
Many of our clients are navigating a business landscape that's full of continual challenges, from tariffs to trade tensions, rising costs, and I think the market shifts on a daily, weekly basis at this point. So we're going to dig into, exploring how equipment financing can help not only your business weather these uncertainties, but also position businesses for growth, because that's what this is all about. So, here's what we're going to be covering today. The new benefits of Section 179 in the big, beautiful bill, how financing strategies can help navigate tariffs and trade tensions, a simple method of calculating an ROI, because at the end of the day, people always want to ask, what's in this for me? And resources, special offers, and other Q&A.
We do have a chat function in the webinar. So as me and Jesse are talking, please feel free to chat any questions or comments you have. Our moderators will be responding live during the webinar to anything that comes up, and they'll be pointing out stuff as well.
I think our first topic today is the beautiful one big beautiful bill. I said beautiful just because we hear it all the time, and people are like, "What does that really mean?" So let's dive into that. The 179 benefits and everything else, and what that means to businesses.
Yeah, so we've been getting lots of questions about this just because it's so new and you hear a lot in the news and all that kind of stuff. And there's just a huge mass of things that it's just within that entire bill. But when it comes to our customers, businesses who use equipment to drive their revenue, the big thing that the bill affects them with is Section 179. Now, Section 179's been around for a while. It is not a new thing. But what the bill does is it adjusts some of the limits, right? Previously, you were limited to deducting up to $1 million in equipment. The bill changed that to $2.5 million. And that takes effect for this tax year. It's not next year's tax year. That's immediate, and that can happen from purchases throughout the rest of this entire year. They also increased the bonus depreciation. So if you go past that limit, you can reapply for a bonus depreciation. Previously, you could only depreciate up to 40% of anything past that limit. Now that's actually been increased to 100% of anything you spend past that $2.5 million limit. But for our businesses, most of the ones that we work with, they're not going to be too concerned with that limit. Some of them might hit that actual spending limit, but now that it's been raised, most of the businesses we work with will be within that limit. And I think the most important part about it is if you don't know what Section 179 is, if you never heard of it before, I highly encourage you to talk to your accountant about it. This is a really powerful tool that the government has provided so that you can reduce your tax bill anytime you buy large commercial equipment, right? So essentially, what it does is rather than depreciating a piece of equipment on your taxes over several years, you get to deduct the full amount of that equipment cost in the year that you purchase it, as long as you use that equipment to generate some revenue. Now, that could affect businesses very differently because it's all dependent on your tax bracket, your tax rate you're taxed on. But the way I like to encourage customers to think about it is Section 179 is a way to essentially reduce the cost of your equipment because you're reducing that tax bill that you'll be facing next year for this year's taxes.
Would this kind of push someone to decide to purchase more equipment?
Absolutely. So we try to do a couple different things. Any customers or potential customers that we've just been engaging with, we first and foremost just want to raise awareness. We've talked to business owners who've been in business for decades, and this just never came on their radar. It was just never something that they knew that they were able to take advantage of, even though they've been purchasing equipment year after year, every single year. So it's just something we just want people to know that's possible. Does it make sense for every business every single tax year? Maybe, maybe not, right? But it's something that they should know about and be talking to their accountant about. The other thing is we try to talk to our reoccurring customers just because we know what their buying cycles are, and to make sure that if we are getting towards the end of the year, right, we're coming up on September here pretty shortly, a lot of them are going to start evaluating where they're at revenue wise, income wise, and starting to plan for making those purchases so they could get the most out of those benefits before the end of the year. So we tend to see a lot of these conversations happen, and which ultimately results into these purchases starting in the fall, and especially once we get into November, December. That's when people are actually getting the equipment, so that they make sure they have it, they've got it in place before the end of the year.
I mean, I'm sure you've had some clients that have been sitting on, potentially some older equipment that's not as efficient or, quite frankly, effective for what your customers need it for, right? It's business essential equipment, but this hopefully, helps them from a business perspective. And even out of that, maybe they can double their revenue by going out and getting more based on this.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, right? This could be the reason to actually make that purchase rather than just wait for it, right? Especially if you don't necessarily have the need to get more equipment. Maybe it's a good time to think about, like, well, what about the equipment I have? Does it make more sense, especially with the tax benefits, to maybe replace that now rather than wait for it to just totally die out and lose all its value, and then I have to replace it because I have I have no choice but to replace it, right? Being a little bit more proactive, taking advantage of these tax benefits might make more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to sit there and every time you turn the key, be like, come on, baby, one more ride. Let's go.
One last thing I wanted to point out with the Section 179 before we move on to our next topic is this is also good for used equipment. It's not just limited to new equipment. I think sometimes people think with these kind of tax incentives that they have to be buying brand new and spending lots and lots of money in order to take advantage of it. But no, it's any new or used equipment, even equipment that's being sold by a private party. All of that can qualify qualify for this tax benefit. Again, I can't say it enough. Talk to your accountant about it, and try to see if this makes sense for you and your business.
Perfect. Thank you, Aaron. Moving on to our next topic, we're going to talk about tariffs and trade tensions. All exciting stuff. Like I said at the beginning, you wake up. I don't really watch the news that often, but when you do, it's like there's always something new going on. It seems like tariffs are mentioned like every day. So let's dig into the question, Aaron. How does equipment financing help small businesses?
Yeah, I feel like this is a topic that kind of keeps coming up. I feel like everybody's expecting like normalcy ever since like the pandemic. Everybody's been waiting for things to kind of get back to normal, and there's just always something else, something new. And I think from a equipment purchasing point of view, I think what's important given the way the global economy is right now, you as a business owner, you really want to think about liquidity, right? Um, Lack of cash is one of the most dangerous things for any business. You never want to be caught in a position where if somebody doesn't pay their contract on time, you're struggling to pay your bills or pay your employees, right? So you don't want to sacrifice all your cash and wing it, right? That's when equipment financing come in to help you get that important equipment. Additionally, you want to be able to act fast, right? Um, with the state of the global economy and all the things that are happening, well, whether it's tariffs or trade or whatever, the unfortunate thing is the equipment is very likely to just continue to get more expensive, and that price point is going to continue to balloon, right? If you see equipment that is available and you want to act fast, equipment financing allows for that, right? We're going to help you be flexible and move quickly on that vital equipment for you. We also want to think about the ways that equipment financing helps you increase your buying power, right? As a business owner, if all you're doing is saving up cash and you're not buying equipment until you have the cash available, again, because equipment's getting more and more expensive, it's going to be harder to reach that goal. Plus, if you're adding a piece of equipment that's going to be driving in revenue, you're just losing out on all that potential revenue as you're waiting to have enough cash on hand to be able to make that purchase. And then additionally, equipment financing allows for purchase of used equipment, right? So if the people that work around in your area regionally, you're friends with people within the trade, and they're trying to move a piece of equipment that they don't have any need for, but you can use equipment financing for that, right? So you're not having to go all over the country or go to a expensive vendor that's not your only option, right? You can actually buy locally and you can finance that used equipment, even if it's sold from a private party.
Perfect. Thanks for those explanations. I'm just going to kind of dig into a couple sections of that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I do some of these, what is it, campus to careers at colleges, and everyone's like, equipment financing. I'm like, I'd rather just get a better deal and pay cash. And I'm like, well, if you got $1 million, you go to mom and dad and get $1 million to start up a company. And if you blow $1 million on everything you need, what happens when something else pops up? Like you're kind of, you're out. So I don't think people really understand that liquidity. I mean, the banking crisis a couple of years ago, that was based on a liquidity event.
Yeah.
It's important, and I don't think people understand that as much as they probably should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whenever I'm talking to customers, I always try to take the how you manage your home expenses is very different than how you manage business expenses, right? Because when you finance a car, right, for your home, right, that car is not a revenue driver. It is not also bringing in money. It's important and you need that car, right? Because that's how you get to and from places, how you drop your kids at school and stuff like that. But it is purely an expense, right? Whereas when you're financing a piece of equipment, that equipment is driving revenue, right? So there's more factors that are at play for a business than there are for that kind of home economics, right? So you want to be able to kind of think about those differences.
Yeah, I basically just hold up my cell phone and say, do you guys have a monthly payment or do you spend $1,200 at once?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they're like, oh, we want the money. There you go. There you go, kids. Um, and I want to touch on the new versus used. Are you seeing a shift either direction in regards to the type of new and used equipment that Beacon's financing?
Um, yes and no, just because the as new equipment becomes more expensive, right? That's going to make the used equipment market more expensive as well, because you're going to have more demand within the used equipment market because people aren't wanting to pay those new equipment prices, right? Um, so there's a shift in who's buying what, but I don't think we've seen necessarily less of either. There still are businesses that are buying that new equipment, and for a variety of reasons, right? It might be the kind of contracts that they have with whoever they're partnered with. It might just be the way they prefer to purchase and have those manufacturer warranties in place, right? Or they might see that the benefit of saving a little bit on that used equipment is more beneficial to them, right? So we're seeing the same numbers. It's just kind of who's buying what. That's kind of changing and evolving, and just has been ever since the market started to evolve over the last couple of years.
Sure. And I guess at one point, as residuals for used were almost probably the equal to get something new as it was used. I think that's probably shifted back
Yeah,
to some
absolutely.
normalcy.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of people think about it too, right? So it really does affect like your buying decisions. The one thing I did want to mention is that with when you are looking at used equipment, check with your lender, especially if you have a lender that you work with pretty closely. For us at Beacon Funding, we actually have a solid amount of off-lease equipment. Right, this is equipment that people decided not to exercise their purchase option on, and is now available for sale. Because we touch so many pieces of equipment in our core industries, we'll always have a handful of items available for sale. We have in-house technicians and partner technicians who look through each of these pieces of equipment to make sure they're good and ready for resale, and they're available for quality prices, right? So that website for us is equipuse.com. That's where we sell all of our off-lease equipment. So if you're currently in the market, it's a good place to check out. You can even go on there and request a piece of equipment. And that way, if something becomes available, our asset team will let you know, like, hey, we have this piece of equipment. It's going to be coming in. It's just like what you were looking for.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of business owners think if they need financing, where do they go? To a bank.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if you haven't been in business for a certain period of time, and a lot of businesses don't have Reddit because it's just a personal pull, not a business pull yet because they haven't established that. It's a really frustrating process. I mean, I've experienced it, right? Where you're just like, what do you mean? Like, come on, like, and so you know, don't get discouraged. Reach out to a partner like Beacon Funding and let them point you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So thank you for bringing that up because dealing with banks can be frustrating.
Sure.
And talk about the benefits. Another benefit of financing. How do you turn financing equipment into actual profit?
Yeah. So I've mentioned this several times throughout the webinar already, right? You want to think about your pieces of equipment as a stream of revenue, right? I like to encourage business owners to think that that piece of equipment is just like an employee, right? It should be turning a profit. It's not just purely an expense, right? It should earn more than what you're paying on it every month, right? So for this example that we have, right, let's say every month my business is earning $22,500 off this piece of equipment that I'm ending up purchasing. Every month I have to make a monthly payment of $1,249 for that piece of equipment. Plus, I've got additional expenses like insurance, payroll, maintenance, stuff like that, that comes up to about $6,107. That means my estimated monthly profit for that piece of equipment is $15,134 for that piece of equipment, that stream of revenue. That's $608,000 a year that we can estimate in profit for that piece of equipment. So what I like to talk to customers about is think about that lease that you're getting for that piece of equipment. It's going to last for 4 years, and it essentially represents $720,000. That is a powerful,
Big number.
powerful tool, right? Exactly. It's not just an expense, right? It's a tool that's going to build your business and help you take home almost $750,000 over a 4-year period, right?
Not only that, you have some interest deductibility to offset that profit.
Absolutely.
Slap with a big tax bill, at the end of the year. I think people also forget that, where it's like, oh, I have to pay it. And it's like, well, actually, there's ways that you can lower your tax bill. We already talked about.
Absolutely. Right. So just I guess the high horse that I'm getting on is don't get bogged down in the expense of it, right? Think about that opportunity and what that piece of equipment's going to bring in, and ultimately what that financing is going to allow that equipment to bring in, right?
Sure. And then based on, the last 6 years at Beacon, are there any like specific examples you might have of maybe a customer or partner success where it's like you walk through kind of an ROI as they started with one piece of equipment, then all of a sudden now they have like a fleet? Any specific examples we might be able to share with the audience, Aaron?
Yeah, it's actually one of the first customers I worked with. It was these two guys. They had been working in the towing industry for a couple of years, and they decided they wanted to start out on their own, and they wanted to get a rollback tow truck. So we worked with them, and we helped them get a lease to own agreement for a used rollback tow truck that they were able to acquire. Very quickly, they were seeing so much success in their area. They were in the Northern California area, and they were having lots of demand from police rotations to some other contracts they were seeing. They needed to get a second truck. I think it was within 6 months of their first truck, we were able to look at all the business credit that they actually were building from making payments on time for that first piece of equipment, and we got them approved and into that second truck so they could start generating revenue there. Since then, they've acquired over 5 different trucks with us, and have gone on to just increase their footprint and their business, even through all the crazy economic stuff that we've seen. What I'm trying to say with that is it's daunting sometimes as a business owner, especially when you're worried about what's going on with the world and the economy, to feel like, oh, I be going for that piece of equipment? But I think business owners know when the opportunity is there, and I'd encourage you, if don't second guess yourself. If you know there's opportunity and you know a piece of equipment can make revenue, you're probably better off getting that piece of equipment and navigating the uncertain market with that equipment, generating revenue, than you are without it.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, going from 0 to 5 pieces of equipment over a 5-6 year stretch, that's impressive. And it's obviously working. Otherwise, they wouldn't be keeping coming back for
Yeah,
more.
exactly.
Perfect.
So looking ahead, with everything that we've talked about today, Jesse, some of the big takeaways that I'm hoping that business owners get out of this webinar is the importance of holding on to their capital, keeping that cash on hand so that they're able to stay flexible, pay bills, pay their payroll, and navigate whatever uncertainty comes with that capital, that cash on hand. Also think about ways in which you can generate that positive ROI, right? That piece of equipment is not just an expense, it is a revenue driving piece of equipment, right? Each piece of equipment I like to think is a revenue stream, and we want to keep those up and going. And if there's opportunity to increase more, you're better off increasing more and navigating the market with those pieces of equipment with that revenue coming in, and not to wait for that equipment. Get the equipment when you need it, right? It's so frustrating as a business owner to feel like you missed out on an opportunity, right? And equipment financing is there to help you capitalize on those moments when you can make the most out of your business. So make the most out of your business, get the equipment when you need it so you can keep a healthy revenue stream for your business. Don't forget to talk to your accountants about Section 179 so you can get the most out of your purchases, right? And see if Section 179 is something that can benefit your business, right? And how best to do that, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the year. You want to make sure you have all those purchases lined up and ready to go. And if you're unsure about how any of these things work, right? Talk to somebody. It never costs anything to have a conversation, right? And just hear out from an equipment financing representative, right? See what they can get you approved for. Talk to them about your plans. That way, you're not rushing when you go to make that purchase, especially as we get towards the end of the year.
Well said. And I know I would take advantage of some of the resources that we covered on this webinar, or reach out to a Beacon Funding representative, Aaron and his team, and just ask them, ask what the benefits of financing, and let them show you kind of in a real world example of what they can do. We had some case studies that we discussed on here, and I'm sure there's real world things that they can do to help your business.
One last thing I wanted to promote when we're here. Everybody who's here on the webinar, who participated or watched the recording later on, you guys as well. We are doing a promotion right now. We're doing 90-day no payments when you finance your equipment with us for qualified applicants. That's available through the end of the year, right? So if you really are thinking about purchasing that equipment, especially if you're like, oh, well, I'm not sure when that revenue is going to really start to pick up, if I can fold it into my process, something like 90-day no payments might be a real benefit, right? Especially right now, if you're talking about taking advantage of Section 179, get the piece of equipment, get that benefit, but also start building up the market presence for it, building up the training and the revenue income before you start making those payments.
So basically, we have 120 days left in the year. I can get the tax benefits and only have to pay for 30 of them.
There you go. That's exactly right. And if this is something you're interested in, just scan this QR code for more information.
Aaron, really appreciate your time today. You're a great co-host, and looking forward to doing more of these, webinars with Beacon. Covered a lot today, and now we're going to turn it over to the official question and answer portion of this. I know it's not easy speaking up, but feel free to. It's an open forum. We're in a safe space. If we get enough questions asked, maybe Aaron will shave his beard for charity. I'm just kidding, man. I'm not going to put that on you.
I appreciate it. See, and please, everybody, do in all seriousness, we'd love to continue the conversation. Go right into the web chat, the webinar chat here, and any questions you have, any comments you have, would be really, really greatly appreciated.
Thank you for your time, man.
Absolutely, Jess. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.